As of me saying these words, the rumor is that Sasha Banks would like to leave the WWE. I mean, she unfollowed the company on Twitter and followed AEW. 2019, that's the equivalent of punching your boss in the face. All coming amongst murmurings of backstage tantrums, let's put that aside and focus on what some seem to have missed. If Banks seeks further career satisfaction, no matter what opportunities have already come her way, good for her. Only Sasha knows what makes sense in her brain. No one should jump down her throat for that. Each to their own, people. With all that said, it's a brand new moment WWE would like you to forget when it comes to the former women's champion, which is why I'm Simon from WhatCulture. Remember to hit that subscribe button, and this is 10 things WWE wants you to forget about Sasha Banks. Number 10, Team Bad. Sasha Banks was able to get over in NXT due to the legit boss character and a bunch of top matches with everybody down there, including Bayley. Throughout, she was also very outspoken about women's wrestling, and all of that came together to build a pretty cool foundation for Sasha. That's why it was odd when she debuted on the main roster in 2015 as part of Team Bad. Like going back to 1994. Teaming with Naomi and Tamina, the first issue was the name for obvious reasons, but it was also a mistake. The three didn't gel as expected, and the other two couldn't match Banks' heelish persona. It all felt out of place, and how anybody didn't realize this was a bad way to bring her up, I don't know. Officials clearly realized it eventually because the group treaded water and did nothing before Sasha left in equally unexciting circumstances. She had enough going on to arrive on her own, but she didn't. Somebody decided she needed some friends, and it just delayed getting into the good stuff. Number 9, she was cannon fodder for Ronda Rousey. I did think it was cool that Ronda Rousey seemingly wanted to feud with as many women on the roster before WrestleMania 35 to say that she did it. One of these was always going to be Sasha Banks, and yet when that came at 2019's Royal Rumble, it was hastily thrown together and felt like an afterthought. WWE tried desperately to convince fans that Banks could win the women's title, but there was more chance of Matt Hardy winning the men's Rumble on this night, and for context, he wasn't even in the thing. It got worse because during this program, Rousey still had major beef with Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch. The focus was obvious, so while it was great we got to see Sasha versus Ronda, and it was pretty good, the feeling was it could have been so much more. The conviction wasn't there. This was proven when as soon as it was over, WWE moved on from it faster than Xavier Woods' survival time that night. Banks was used as a victim for Rousey to continue on some kind of streak before meeting her real rivals at the biggest show of the year. We should have got a whole feud out of this, and we did not. Number 8, those bumps. There are a lot of gifs out there in the world of social media that show Sasha Banks taking some pretty hardcore bumps. If you can watch them without wincing, you're a stronger person than I. One of these, which always does the rounds, is a German suplex by Paige where Sasha lands right on her neck. It's arguably no worse than the many New Japan clips that are also retweeted like no one's business, but that doesn't mean it's easy to look at them. If you told me straight after her head fell off, I'd probably believe you. There are others too, and that is part and parcel of being a wrestler, but they do add up, as do the injuries. I admire Sasha's bravery and risk-taking attitude, but I'm also an old man, so worry about what this means down the line, and if I think that, WWE probably does as well. She's on their books, for now at least anyway. Wrestling takes a toll on even the safest performers, so stuff like this is never going to be high on many people's lists. Number 7, Total Divas. Tying into this idea that Sasha Banks is far more interested in being a wrestler more than anything else, she turned down WWE when they asked her to be part of Total Divas. Fair play. Banks has done plenty of interviews where she said she doesn't want to go anywhere near that show, telling Pro Wrestling Sheet in 2016 she doesn't have a problem with anyone who agrees to be involved, but it's just not her kind of thing. Or in short, she's there to win titles and not be involved in a very odd reality program where storylines more often than not revolve around worrying about Natalia's cat. That's all I got from it anyway. WWE kept asking though, and as Sasha rightfully pointed out, she's worked hard to rid all of the women of that diva name. As such, I don't think she wants to be that involved. Well, no, she doesn't. It's the whole point. Number 6, that Bayley non-feud. This was genuinely really bad, irked me good and proper, and likely was a reason that Sasha Banks struggled to get her momentum back once it was all done. What should have been a time where WWE finally pulled the trigger on the Sasha Banks-Bayley feud on the main roster soon became a frenemy story that was painful to watch. Instead of allowing them to repeat their NXT success, WWE just teased heel turns, put them in therapy sessions, and dragged it out for weeks before giving up on it entirely. It did lead to the Boss and Hug connection, who will forever be the first WWE Women's Tag Team Champions of the modern era, but the lack of payoff beforehand was tedious at best. Even seeing Sasha throw Bayley into a locker was passed off as just one of those things besties do. Yeah, right. Because of this too, fans switched off and it contributed to less and less noise when the pair were in front of a crowd. Plus there was the worry that it could start up again at any time and once again go nowhere. It was boy who cried wolf, and it was executed awfully. I would have preferred it if they had gone at it eventually and then got back together somehow. At least then we'd have some resolution. Instead of absolutely nothing. Number 5, all her Raw title reigns lasted less than a month. This got so bad other wrestlers started to mention it in their promos when talking about Sasha, and it's true. Banks has been Raw Women's Champion 4 times since the belt came into being in 2016 and yet was never given a proper run. The first reign lasted 27 days, the second was also 27 days, the third was 20, and number 4 ran out of steam after a full 8 days. That makes for a total of 82 days, which is 31 days less than Charlotte Flair's first championship run alone. You see why she's a little pissed off. The summer of that year was still big for Sasha, but it does seem like it was more of a case of changing the belt around as opposed to making them mean anything. All of these reigns came within one calendar year too, meaning they came thick and fast before petering out. You can't do much with that, and not only did it lead to people picking up on it, but it ruined the title's prestige a little bit. You can't just hurl it around and expect everyone to be fine, especially when you've only just invented the damn thing. Unfortunately, Sasha Banks got caught up in all of this madness. Number 4, she's never attained a main roster title. Following on from that is part 2, which also ties into the stigma around Sasha's title reigns, because in the mentioned 12-month period, Banks never had one successful championship defense. In other words, if you wanted a shiny prize, you just had to challenge the legit boss when she had a title, and you'd probably get it. After first winning the championship on Raw in July of 2016, Banks dropped it back to Charlotte at SummerSlam. Then after winning on the 3rd of October Raw, Sasha lost it again to Flair at Hell in a Cell. Her third reign started on the 28th of November Raw and ended at Roadblock End of the Line. That was her first hurdle after claiming the damn thing. In 2017, she won the title from Alexa Bliss at SummerSlam before dropping it back to her 8 days later on Raw. In short, her record is shocking and doesn't portray Banks as a threat that can hold her own. In fact, on paper, it sounds like she flukes winning the thing and then can't defend it at all. Booking babyfaces to fail is always going to negate fan support because they see you as a loser, and whether you like it or not, most people like winners. You want to live through the character you see on the screen, and having Sasha always being on the wrong end of a win meant fans started to look elsewhere to get their victory kicks. Number 3, the aftermath of the Charlotte feud. The Charlotte-Sasha program on the main roster in 2016 was great. Let's definitely not forget that. They had epic main event matches on Raw, Falls Count Anywhere brawls, and made history at Hell in a Cell. They even had an Iron Woman contest. If Bayley was essential to Banks' progression in NXT, Charlotte filled that void on the main roster. So when the Queen was drafted to SmackDown in 2017, something changed, and not for the better. With no natural enemy, Banks found herself drifting, and because of that, her stock eventually fell. It worked the other way too, as Flair also struggled to move on at first, but look at the difference between their careers from here. One definitely sorted it, the other maybe not so. The concept, I think, was to finally do that as a tag champ, but as we know, WWE had other ideas by taking the belts off Sasha and Bayley and giving them to the Iconics at WrestleMania 35. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, but for Banks it just tied into all the same issues we've discussed. Number 2, she's better as a heel. Now this is an odd one. We are coming up to 4 years since Banks arrived on the main roster, and for that entire time she's pretty much been a babyface. How is that a real thing when in NXT she proved time and time again how good she was as a heel? Being a bad guy allows her own nickname to make more sense for one, but not even trying is ridiculous. Every time it's come around though, WWE has shied away from it. Clearly not realizing this was the case and that it's how she built her career, we need the arrogant, bling-tastic, bratty Banks now so she can throw all of that into fans' faces. We saw a touch of it in Team Bad, but as we've said, that group sucked. If the foundations are always breaking, it doesn't matter what else you build on top of it. Given everything that's happened recently, a Sasha heel turn would give her a whole new spin in 2019 and allow her to be far more aggressive on a microphone. It could almost be like WWE signed a brand new star and maybe most importantly reintroduce that edge she drastically misses. If not, we could just bring back the wrestler edge, because right now we need to try anything. I don't know what his schedule is like, but I'm sure he could try. Number 1, the WrestleMania 35 quitting rumors. We mentioned this at the beginning and all paths lead to this really, but the Wrestling Observer speculated recently that Banks wasn't happy about losing those titles at Mania 35 and felt that she'd been blindsided by the WWE. She asked to quit, but instead Sasha has taken a few weeks off to cool down and reevaluate her future. That spells trouble for everybody involved. WWE won't want to lose Banks at a time when AEW is becoming a very real alternative, and Sasha will be mindful of taking too long to make a decision. This is not a story the company needs to deal with right now, given we're coming off the back of the most lucrative weekend in the promotion's history. The truth, though, is that Banks isn't happy about the direction of her character, so if WWE doesn't sort it out, she will leave. Yet another top star walking out after a very newsworthy breakdown. You just know management wants to avoid that, but there's every chance they're already too late. Know of anything else WWE wants you to forget about Sasha Banks? Make sure you let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then head over to WhatCulture.com and read yourself some articles, and follow WhatCulture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. My name is Simon from WhatCulture, and I will talk to you again soon.